In the high-stakes chess match of global security, the board is constantly changing. And right now, the relationship between Russia and NATO is one of the most critical and, frankly, most complex games being played. We're going to peel back the layers, look past the daily headlines, and really get into the fundamental military balance, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the huge strategic dilemmas that define this new era. So let's dive in. For generations, the sheer size of the map gave Russia a kind of safety net, a massive defensive buffer. But that advantage? It's gone. The spread of long-range, super precise weapons has completely wiped it off the table. The entire security landscape has been redrawn, and that makes any potential conflict way more immediate and a whole lot more dangerous for everyone. So this all leads to the big question, right? If these two military giants were ever to actually face off, what would that even look like? What are the real differences in how they'd fight, and who, at the end of the day, really holds the upper hand? It's a huge puzzle, and we're about to start putting the pieces together. All right, first things first, let's get our bearings on this new European battlefield. To really get a handle on the strategies in play, you have to understand how the map itself has been completely turned upside down. Okay, so there's this really important military idea we need to talk about called strategic depth. Basically, think of it as a country's safety buffer. For Russia, historically, its greatest military asset has been its incredible size. It could literally trade land for time, letting invading armies just get swallowed up by the vastness of the territory. But here is the absolute game changer. With NATO expanding right up to its borders, Russia has lost that safety buffer. It's gone. All of a sudden, weapons that used to be considered short-range, tactical stuff can now reach deep inside Russia, hitting command centers, airfields, supply depots. And this creates a massive new headache for Moscow. And that new reality directly shapes how Russia thinks about war. To understand their military philosophy, you have to look at how it was forged, by its geography and by a long and often very painful history. I mean, this timeline really says it all. Napoleon in 1812, World War I, the Nazis in 1941. This deep, deep sense of insecurity, born from centuries of absolutely devastating invasions, is baked right into Russia's strategic DNA. This isn't just ancient history. It's a core part of their national psyche that shapes military decisions being made today. And all that history leads to a very specific way of fighting. Russia's traditional approach to a big war is all about one thing: mass. Overwhelming an enemy with just sheer numbers of troops and unbelievable amounts of firepower. It's a doctrine of attrition warfare, designed to grind the enemy down and win a long, brutal war of exhaustion. So, what does mass really mean in practice? Take a look at this number, 1,000. That represents just one category of Russia's reserve artillery pieces. It is a staggering amount, and it gives you a real sense of the immense scale they're prepared for and just how central cannons and rockets are to their entire way of thinking. Okay, so that's Russia's playbook. Now, let's pivot. How does NATO plan to counter that? Well, they're not trying to match mass with mass. They're playing a totally different game, leveraging their own huge advantage: technological superiority. And you better believe Russia knows exactly what NATO's biggest strength is. Their heavy investment in powerful, mobile, ground-based systems like the Iskander short-range ballistic missile is a direct and very deliberate countermeasure to NATO's greatest threat: its total dominance in the air. And this is where you see the two strategies just completely diverge. It's a fundamental asymmetry. Russia has poured a ton of resources into building this formidable ground-based shield of surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs, and powerful ballistic missiles. NATO, on the other hand, is betting it all on its ability to own the skies with a vastly superior air force. And NATO's air power isn't just one thing. It's a whole integrated system. We're talking about cutting-edge stealth aircraft, a massive arsenal of over 3,000 air-launched cruise missiles just among the European members alone, and this incredibly sophisticated network for intelligence and surveillance. Put it all together, and it gives NATO the power to hit exactly what it wants to from very far away, completely bypassing Russia's strengths on the ground. But here's the twist. This is not a one-sided story. Both sides are playing this really delicate game because, for all their different strengths, each has a critical vulnerability, which creates this incredibly tense and unpredictable balance of power. For Russia, the challenge is simple geography. Their air defense systems, like the famous S-400, are absolutely world-class. But they don't have an infinite number of them, and they have to defend an enormous territory. They simply can't protect every single important target at the same time. And this creates what military planners call a dilemma. Let's just walk through it. Step 1, NATO uses a long-range missile to take out a high-value target, say a command bunker. Okay, so what does Russia do? Step 2, they're forced to move their best air defenses, their S-400s, to protect other similar bunkers. But see, that's the trap. Step 3, every system they move to protect one thing leaves a gap somewhere else, thinning out the air cover for their own troops on the front line. And that leads to Step 4, those ground troops are now way more vulnerable to being hit by NATO planes. But NATO is not invincible. They have their own Achilles heel. In a big conflict, their own ground-based air defenses would be completely overwhelmed. They just do not have enough systems to defend both their armies in the field and all the critical civilian infrastructure, power plants, ports, cities, all across Europe from a massive Russian missile attack. And there's another really modern vulnerability. NATO's tech edge is hugely dependent on satellites for everything: communication, navigation, targeting. This quote nails it, calling space an economy of force target. What does that mean? It means Russia can get a huge strategic bang for its buck by going after these critical but very fragile systems. It's a way for them to punch well above their weight. So, we've got these two giants, right? Each armed with a powerful sword, but also carrying a pretty weak shield. Where does this all go? Let's pull all these threads together and look at what this tense competition really means for the future of war itself. You know, it's easy to get lost in the strategy and the maps, but it is so important to remember the real-world stakes here. The lessons that are shaping the future of conflict aren't just coming from think tanks. They're being learned in the brutal, horrifying reality of modern battlefields. The war in Ukraine has basically become a live-fire laboratory for future warfare, and you can be sure both sides are taking very careful notes. We're seeing battlefields transformed by swarms of drones, the absolutely critical role of electronic warfare, and this constant duel between Russian mass and NATO-supplied precision. It's this strange mix of old-school tanks and cutting-edge surveillance that makes the battlefield more lethal and more transparent than ever before. And of course, we can't ignore the ultimate asymmetric tool. Russia has a nuclear doctrine often called escalate to de-escalate. Now, the terrifying logic goes like this. If they're losing a conventional war badly, they might use a small, tactical nuclear weapon on the battlefield. The goal wouldn't be to start a full-blown nuclear war, but to shock NATO so profoundly that it stops the fighting and agrees to negotiate. It's a chilling, but absolutely essential part of their strategy. Which leaves us with this final and really critical question. In an age of precision strikes, cyber attacks, drones, and renewed fears about nuclear weapons, what does it actually take to deter a great power? The answer is more complicated and, honestly, more uncertain than it has been in a very long time.